Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the journalist and author Jenny Kleeman and the PR consultant and Conservative candidate in the upcoming general election, Alex Deane. Welcome to both of you. With us from now until just before midnight, I know. So to the front pages, let us start with the Metro, referring to this morning's awful events in Baltimore. The Metro has the headline, Heartbreak Bridge. The Daily Mail reporting on how the Clapham chemical attacker was allowed to stay in the UK despite new files revealing that he lied about his past. The Telegraph includes the Home Office warning that churches risk undermining the asylum system following the news that the chemical attacker also failed a Christianity test. The Times reports that satisfaction with the NHS has fallen to a historic low, with only a quarter of the public believing that the health service is working. The Guardian reveals that the Confederation of British Industry has used gagging clauses to prevent staff discussing their experiences of sexual misconduct and bullying at the organisation. And the Eye reports that the state pension age may rise to 68 in order to fund a Conservative pledge. The Mirror reports on two British men fighting for Putin's army in Ukraine. And the Financial Times reporting that Donald Trump's Truth Social quickly gained 50% on its initial value following its debut on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange. Well, a reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us, listen to our guests. So let's head to Jenny Kleeman and Alex Deane. And some really dramatic pictures, Jenny, of this Baltimore bridge collapse on the front pages.
Really extraordinary. And I was just saying to Alex during the break there that, because I know how big a shipping container is, you get a sense of the scale of all of this, of what an enormous vessel crashed into an enormous bridge, and what could have been an untold number of lives lost had this Mayday signal not gone out from those on the ship in advance. They stopped.
And these are the moments, aren't they? The lights going out, looks like power had gone, flashing on again, smoke billowing from the back of it, and then, pinging that bridge, and very quickly the bridge collapsed.
It's just extraordinary. No matter how many times I see these pictures, I can't. It's extraordinary every single time. The bridge just collapses within seconds. But yes, there were no cars on this bridge because of the Mayday signal that went out, which is, incredibly fortunate, although there are 6 people who are missing, who are trying to repair potholes on the bridge. And we are going to feel the aftermath of this because this port was... it is supposed to be the main port on the eastern seaboard where cars are imported. It's the sort of Suez Canal for the export of cars, various other things that could be affected. Coal could be, sugar could be, LNG could be. This is a major, major port. The entire port is shut for the moment. And then there's also, traffic across the bridge. It's a huge disaster. But in terms of lives lost, it could have been so much worse if it weren't for the quick thinking of the crew.
Yes, 30,000 vehicles a day. Joe Biden reiterated the bridge is critical for what they call the Northeast Corridor. 850,000 vehicles going through that port each year in terms of import and export, coal and other goods as well. 15,000 jobs relying on this port. And the promise from Joe Biden to move heaven and earth, to clear it, first of all, and then reopen it. But still, this is a rescue operation, despite the temperatures in that water.
Yeah, and you've got to think, given the environmental conditions, very sadly, it may be fruitless to hope for people surviving, I'm afraid. The President knows this part of the world quite well. He was, of course, Senator for Delaware for decades. He would have been up and down the Delmarva Peninsula in this part of Maryland many, many times. I know Baltimore quite well, but most visitors don't go to this part of the Patapsco and this part of of town. It's more industrial, but it is an enormous scene of sadness for me and for the people of Maryland. I do just make the point about the infrastructure. questions. I mean, today is for trying to clear up, and if lives can be saved, fantastic, and for rejoicing that more lives weren't lost. Questions will be asked about whether there was adequate safety and security in place. We build infrastructure for a long time, but we do try and make it safe over time too. And many bridges have cushioning apparatus built around them.
Often metal, so they deflect.
So it can help glance off a blow,
yeah.
and that seems not to have been in place. Not to carp about things like, no one, I'm certainly not a bridge expert, but I am no doubt questions will be asked about this.
Yes, one person I heard suggesting that they were too small and in the wrong place. So whether retrospective building on this decades-old bridge should have been in place, and whether other people need to look at other bridges in light of these enormous vessels going through these spans.
When they built the Francis Scott Key Bridge, people were not moving cargo at this kind of volume and scale. That bridge was not designed to take an impact from that boat.
Yeah. Yeah, and so much investigation underway. You know, obviously what happened on the vessel, how it lost power, as it seems. The Mayday, which clearly, as you said, allowed people to run into the road and stop traffic, as you can see vehicles going across, can't you, in the initial pictures. And also, as Alex was talking about, the protections at the base of the bridge, and why a bridge like that goes down so quickly and so completely.
It goes down so quickly.
Yeah,
it's sort of within 3 seconds, the entire thing kind of crumbles. You know, the authorities there are very quick to rule out terrorism, rule out anything of that sort. Of course, we're living in an age where people are going to speculate no matter what is said.
Immediate conspiracy
theories. Yes, for them, you know, there's going to be extensive investigation about all of this, and hopefully this will be something that, as you say, people can learn from, and other bridges can be reinforced, because the potential for loss of life on this is so enormous. Yeah. Really so enormous. So, you know, we really hope that lessons can be learned.
Yeah, and this idea of getting it all moving quickly, you know, you've got to get all this out of the way first.
Yes, and it's
an enormous construction project.
It's going to be a hell of a bit of work. If people who know that part of the world, there's a famous Fort Carroll just in front of the bridge, which was built for the American Civil War, on a little island, has a lighthouse on it. That's the kind of thing that people might know about if they're in and around the Delmarva environment. But this is a big body of water, right? Which, I mean, makes it so incredibly unlucky that it hit the standing rather than going through the enormous gap under the bridge. But my point is, this is a huge amount of metal in the water, and you're not going to know it's going to be safer shipping going through it until you've recovered the majority of it from the water.
Yeah, I mean...
That's absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah,
look at the
amazing
size
photograph there. The damaged bow of the container ship, Dali, in the wreckage of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore after the vessel struck the crossing and destroyed it yesterday. 6 people reported missing, and certainly our correspondent who's in Baltimore suggesting that people have been taken away by emergency services, who are apparently those of the missing, and they're being held together now, you know, while they wait. Truly horrific, really, for those people who are, you know, as we heard, mending potholes on a bridge overnight. Really difficult, but some really, you know, extraordinary pictures certainly in the newspapers. Should we move on to the Yazidi documents?
Yes.
A number of news organisations, including our own, had been asking for information about this. It has finally been forthcoming. The Daily Telegraph is one of those newspapers who are carrying this, sort of taking it on effectively. So Abdul Yazidi, first of all, he was the Clapham chemical attack suspect who then went missing. The question is, did he convert to Christianity, and why was he allowed to be granted asylum?
And his application for asylum was supported by a Baptist minister, who, it emerges in the course of these discussions and disclosure, for which I give credit to your channel and in these titles, it emerges this person had given supportive evidence in 5 previous asylum applications, which had also been successful. I'd make an unpopular point. It is the job of faith organisations to give people the benefit of the doubt, perhaps even to be naive and to be willing to see someone's better side. But it's the job of the authorities concerned to be sceptical and say, you know, pull the other one, it's got bells on. Especially after, in the way that the church was dealing with this man, they said, well, since he came to the UK, he's being convicted of sexual assault. We're aware he's got this order against him, so we'll just have to let him not come to the church unless he's supervised and so forth, and still support his asylum application.
Yes, I mean, I have to say I completely agree with you here. You know, there's a lot of focus in this coverage about, you know, the headline in the Telegraph here is churches undermining the asylum system. This was a judgment made by an immigration judge who has to make a judgment call on the basis of all of the evidence. This is somebody who had been found guilty repeatedly of committing sexual offences. It should not be the case, and I know this is to do with the law and not the judgment of the judge, But it should not be the case that you can be granted asylum in this country if you have been found guilty of sexual offences. That cannot be right.
Especially once here.
Yes,
right?
once here, exactly. And this is not just one. He was indecent exposure and another sexual offence. Also, you know, the details here in this Telegraph piece, the evidence presented to the court showed that he had lied persistently about his background. He had claimed to be Shia when he was Sunni. He had claimed in some cases that his brother was killed by a bomb in Afghanistan, and then in other places he'd said other things. You know, when you actually look at the evidence, which the judge would have done, this does not seem like a strong case for asylum. So it's claiming that this is the church's fault or this particular reverend's fault for supporting several claims. There are many, many pieces here in this puzzle which the full picture would say this man should not have been granted asylum.
Just to dwell for a moment on that point about being convicted of an offence in the United Kingdom. It will often form a part of an applicant's case that, of course, I've got these false convictions against me back home. That's because the system is prejudiced against me back home. That's why you can't trust that. So it's not to be flippant about sexual assault convictions in the other country. It's say once you're here and you're applying from a system we believe to be fair, and that same system has convicted you, it should count heavily against you to the point of excluding you.
And I would say, especially in the case of sexual offences, it's just beyond belief that the system would allow this to slip through the net, and this is
the consequence.
This is the consequence.
Well, I mean, fiasco is the word the Daily Mail uses here. Clapham chemical attacker, asylum fiasco. The judge, in his summary, raising questions about the honesty of him, and also some of the evidence was him handing out church leaflets. You know, photographs of him handing out, you know, church leaflets. So
well, that's nice.
What counts as evidence, really? I suppose. For
and I've no doubt that well-meaning people said, one, get involved in the church, and two, go and do this. It'll help your asylum application. It doesn't mean that the system has to believe you, and it doesn't mean that they have to think that's compelling evidence.
Yes, and I would say, you know, this is not necessarily the fault of the people involved in the church, because they're not the ones who make the decision.
Exactly.
Although, you know, it's about the immigration judge making that decision.
Now let's go to The Guardian. They came in an exclusive, and this is the use of NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, used, they suggest, at the CBI, which is, you know, prevalent in many spheres, to be fair, the use of NDAs.
Yes.
But tell us more.
Although the CBI has had a pretty bad time over the past year, had to change its chief executive as a result of allegations being made about sexual impropriety, sexual misconduct. And The Guardian's report here says that in the last year, so this is since these allegations come to light, these NDAs have been signed in the past year, and substantial financial settlements have been received from the CBI from people making these claims. And this is, of course, a disaster for the CBI that already has a very tarnished image as a consequence of these allegations from last year. And, you know, we know that, for example, Zelda Perkins, who was Harvey Weinstein's PA, has been campaigning against these NDAs, particularly when they are used to stop people speaking out about sexual misconduct, because what they do is they allow perpetrators to continue, because, you know, you sign something, you get a payoff, the person stays in their post, they can potentially offend again. You know, you're not meant to use, morally, you're not meant to use NDAs in this way.
I need to get to break, but just quickly, MPs have actually looked at this, haven't they?
Yes.
As part of their sexism in the city investigations, and recommended against the use of them.
But of all the organisations that shouldn't be using them, the CBI is top of the list.
It's simply incompatible with claiming that you're trying to change your culture to use gagging clauses while you're doing it.
OK. Lots more still to come. You thought it was broke? Think again. Donald Trump's social media app does well on its stock market debut, and we mean well. Back with that in just a moment. Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview, joined once again by Jenny Kleeman and Alex Deane. Welcome back to both of you. Donald Trump. Now, if this had happened the day before, things might have been different in his appeal court hearing about the $464 million that he was supposed to pay to the court, which was reduced heavily because his Truth Social media site has been massively valued.
It's the holding group around it. So Trump Media and Technology Group, for which that is the most famous part, has now been listed, and its shares jumped enormously on listing and has a technical valuation now of $14 billion US dollars. The reason I say technical is that were somebody with a stake as large as the former president's to sell their stake, then it would drop back down again. So it's actually sort of catch-22. If you were told to liquidate your assets in it, which currently on the clauses for sale he couldn't, there's a 6-month break, then the price would plummet again and you'd have to work out what
but his value
was left.
Of this theoretical is now?
$5 billion US.
On paper.
5 billion.
On paper.
Yeah.
And, what's interesting about this is, Truth Social doesn't make a profit. There aren't many people who are on it. In many ways, this valuation is more about the enthusiasm of Trump supporters and their willingness to put their money where their mouth is in terms of supporting him than anything else. I mean, this is an endorsement of them investing in him. And whether or not in 6 months' time it will have this valuation is another matter. But he needs cash, and not just because of this bond in the New York civil case. He's also going to be fighting a presidential election, and it's said to be... It's going to be the most expensive in terms of the advertising because it's so
Alex,
close.
It's really interesting. It's really circular, though. When somebody has this much money invested in a business through its listing, it could actually turn out a good product. Like, there's so much money you can use now. You might get even though it may not be the best media product in the world right now, you might, by dint of this investment, create something worth value.
OK. Quick rattle through, if you don't mind. I'm going to do the eye. Of great interest because we've heard from the WASPy women, those born in the 1950s, who say they weren't told the pension age was going up. The prospect that it's going to 68. Quick scan of when, which is the critical thing everyone wants to know. People aged 47 to 48 expecting to retire in 2044 could face a longer wait. But I know you want to get to the next story. Apologies, we'll do that in more detail later. In the Metro, about feedback.
Well, yes, a customer of British Gas was woken up by an automated call from British Gas at 3:15 a.m. wanting feedback on her experience dealing with British Gas. And a bugbear of mine is being asked for feedback on everything, every cab ride, your parking space. I get emails saying, you parked here, how was your parking experience? Every delivery, everything that you ever get. And it's because, people want to, get traffic, get ratings. But we're living in a world where you can't blink without being rated for blinking.
I'm with you. We're all with you.
She's right, but to rub salt into the wound, in this individual example, her complaint hadn't been resolved. So the robocall was actually particularly unhelpful.
There we go. Plenty more to talk about. We'll see you later. Thank you both very much indeed. Jenny and Alex, thank you.